Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and today I will be ranking all of the superhero and comic book movies I saw in 2018. Another year in which the superhero comic book film dominated the box office. Yes, we keep hearing about fatigue, but we don't see it in those box office results. And to be honest, I'm not feeling any sort of fatigue because I really enjoyed most every film that made it onto this list. So, for the purposes of my ranking, I am including both films that are based off of comic book properties, such as Aquaman, the Marvel properties, all of that fun jazz, but also just superhero films in general. So, we get things like The Incredibles. I'm only ranking the theatrically wide released films, however. If there were a Netflix film, it would also be able to make the ranking. But to my knowledge, there weren't any. And if there were, I didn't watch it. So, but that does exclude any of the straight to DVD, straight to Blu-ray and streaming DC animated films. So those will not be appearing here on the list. So in total, that leaves me with 9 superhero films to rank from the year 2018. That's more than last year, and again, for this many quality films, that's a great number. So the disclaimer before we jump in. First of all, I can only rank the films that I saw, so if I didn't see it, it can't be included here on the ranking. Secondly, this is just my personal opinion. This is how I enjoyed the films as I watched them. It's not necessarily based on what's the best film or certainly not based off of box office, nothing like that. It just comes down to my personal taste. And differing opinions are what makes discussing film so much fun and such a great thing and community to be a part of. Just take my list for what it is, and I really look forward to hearing everyone else's list in the comments below so we can discuss some awesome films. So without further ado, let's jump in with number 9, aka Dead Last. I have to be honest, Venom is the only film on the ranking that I didn't outright really like. For 8 upward, I really liked, gave great remarks. Venom, however, was a huge mixed bag. There were great parts, in particular, really, Venom as a character and his relationship with Eddie Brock. Fantastic. And the humor that goes along, the physical humor, the written humor, all of the situational humor that comes with these two coming together was fantastic. Since the second half of the film is mostly all dedicated to that, it's hard not to just have a really good time. This was definitely a throwback to days of yesteryear with the superhero genre. It didn't take itself seriously, and there's definitely something refreshing about that. Plus, it's nice to have like an anti-hero who's not bound to just doing good. However, that script was rough. I mean, there is some real clunkers thrown into this dialogue. The story is just all over the place, a mess. And literally everybody outside of Eddie Brock and Venom together, who cares? They're all throwaway characters that we literally don't care about. And even worse, we don't like, including Michelle Williams' love interest, who was pointless in the film. While there's a lot to have fun with in Venom, there is probably just as much to really not like in Venom as well. So, with such a mixed bag, it ends up at number 9. This is so hard to put down at number 8 because I really like this film. I thought it was so much fun. What a blast when I saw it in the movie theaters. And I gave it a great review, so I'm actually pretty shocked myself to be placing it all the way down at number 8. So how did it slip down here? Well, in preparation for this list, I rewatched this along with a couple of the other films on the ranking, and was reminded just of how many, butt, fart, poop jokes there are in the film, and they definitely do detract. They start to really pile on and add before we get to the end of the film. There is some stuff that's a little bit on the juvenile side that I didn't quite remember from the first viewing. So put them a little bit lower, especially when we have other great comedic superhero films for the year, Teen Titans Go just kind of slipped down a little bit further in the cracks. However, even upon second viewing, I laughed quite a bit because I think this is a very fun, very funny film. This is meta humor for kids done well. They roast DC in this film. They are not afraid to go after their parent studio. They roast Warner Brothers. They have a great Stan Lee cameo in here. A wonderful musical number that was just so fantastic. I also loved the ending of this movie. I thought it was so funny. There's just so much great stuff in here. Really, the meta humor itself just killed it throughout the film. It's when they veer off meta, when they start going into just like straight up jokes, that we get a little bit ridiculous, a little bit stupid, and it doesn't work quite as well. But Teen Titans Go to the Movies was a really fun, really great time at the movie theater, and it still only made it to number 8. I know, I am rocking the shirt, and Aquaman is at number 7. And I've already mentioned it a couple times, but realize that number 8 all the way up to number 1, I really, really enjoyed these films. So it comes down to the small things when you're looking at rankings. And with Aquaman, most of it is so fun. I had a blast watching Aquaman. First of all, Jason Momoa can just walk around shirtless, and I'm pretty on board. No, but he's also very charismatic. He can carry a film like this. He's just a natural, effortless Aquaman, and you just have a blast being with him on screen. I also think Amber Heard was very solid, despite that horrible red hair. But I was glad to see Mara get this kick-ass role, this very proactive, awesome female lead character. The visuals are also stunning. That underwater world just looks really stellar. The world building is so fantastic. And I think our villains in this film both work really well. Black Manta doesn't disappoint, and neither does Patrick Wilson, and in a role where he just gets to chew up the scenery, but in the best possible way. The reason Aquaman sits at number 7 is because, once again, that script. That was the main problem here. A lot of development within the storyline itself wasn't quite there for me, personally. And then some of the jokes, especially when paired with that score, would really start to air on way too cheesy. Add on to that the different plot holes and some dodgy CGI with the human characters underwater, and Aquaman isn't quite able to leapfrog some of the other entries on the list, but it was still a blast to watch. This was just a blast. This was such a fun, funny, easy breezy kind of superhero film. Paul Rudd is back as AntMan, and he's great. Scott Lang is so funny. He's really charming. He's just as likable and lovable as he has been throughout his appearances within the MCU. But the real star here is the Wasp herself. Evangeline Lilly kills it. And let me just say, adding the Wasp into the title card and bumping her up to like superhero status elevated the Ant-Man property when it comes to scale and action, because she was able to really bring competent, awesome action. But we still got that humor. We still got that like shrinking down and popping up big underneath cars, Hello Kitty Pez dispensers getting blown up huge, literally drive-ins and having conversations underneath other cars. I mean, all of that fun size gag was still there. And then the size changing for the action sequences was all there as well. Plus, while I don't think our villain fully works in this film, it's an overall much more interesting concept than we're used to seeing. A much more gray area villain than is typical for many Marvel films. I do think she's the weakest of the Marvel villains, hence Ant-Man is also the lowest of the MCU films here. And it's definitely not as funny as the first. I did notice myself smiling and giggling with the film, but it definitely never reaches the like super enjoyable heights of the original Ant-Man for me personally, and that's what keeps it really from being able to break the top 5, but it's still just this really fun, good time Marvel flick. I'm really glad I rewatched Deadpool 2 for this ranking, because I think I would have actually put it a bit lower here. But wow, one, I forgot how funny Deadpool 2 is. I think some of the negatives that I had in my head overshadowed all of the good stuff that this film gets right. The jokes, of course, come fast and they come furious, but there are some great jokes in this film. I think there's actually a lot of really good subtext jokes that are just under the surface that work fantastically well. And then we do get the like obvious over your head type jokes, like the end credit sequence, which was amazing. But the action is also a lot of fun. Obviously, it's gory. And then we get characters like Domino, just awesome, coming in and stealing the show. Cable and Deadpool are amazing together. I really enjoyed Josh Brolin as Cable and Cable as a character. But really, the relationship I loved the most was Colossus with Deadpool. That whole entire storyline was just everything to me. I loved it so much. Now the kid, he's a little bit annoying. Juggernaut doesn't look so great visually for me and kind of sounds annoying too. And weird things like the little baby legs I didn't love. But upon rewatch, I just realized I was laughing, like audibly laughing, smiling throughout. I had such a good time with this film, with the cameos in this film, with all of those jokes. I thought the storyline actually did have a lot more heart than I originally gave it credit for. So, Deadpool 2 found its way all the way up to number 5. What a great Pixar sequel. We've waited so long for The Incredibles to finally get this long-awaited sequel, and thankfully it did not disappoint. This was a pretty spectacular animated film. First of all, the animation is absolutely stunning. As Pixar usually does, they really delivered a beautiful film here. And what makes it that much more special is that the action in this film is absolutely beautiful. It's crisp, it's clean, it's exciting, and you add that to the score, and you just have perfect recipe for amazing superhero action. But it's the storyline that shines through here most for me. The arc that we get with both of our parents of this superhero team. Elastigirl getting to be out front as a hero, having to leave behind her family and really find her own and find her footing as a hero in her own right. And then we have Mr. Incredible staying at home, being a new type of superhero, a superhero as a dad. And I thought that was such a great representation to have. And both were complex, layered, and really interesting. I thought our main storylines and character development were done expertly well in this film. Plus, we get really fun gags like Violet and her whole like teenage love life nonsense. We get Jack versus the Raccoon, which is still one of the best scenes of any film in 2018. And Edna Mode is back, even for just a bit, to give us some more delight there. Now, the villain was super predictable. I pegged the villain pretty much as soon as they came onto screen, and turns out that's exactly what happened. And I think the motivations for the villain are a little bit boring. The villain overall is just so much more forgettable than the first film, and that makes the actual driving force conflict of the film the weakest part of the movie by far. And that's really what keeps The Incredibles 2 from moving up into the top 3, but still a wonderful Pixar sequel and an amazing animated superhero film. The superhero event for a generation, Avengers Infinity War, was the culmination of 10 years worth of MCU amazingness all in one film. And it definitely lived up to such a monumental task. Infinity War was grand, it was epic, these stories all worked so well. We got different little segments of heroes without any hero getting the big shaft. For me, the action in this movie was the best action out of any of the superhero films we got in 2018. The score was epic. Thor is my personal favorite member of the Avengers, and his story arc in this movie was stellar. It was probably the best actual character development we've gotten from his character since his introduction so many years ago, and that entrance on Wakanda still just like gives me chills thinking about it. Spider-Man, Tom Holland was killing it. Black Panther was wonderful. Captain America was great. Scarlet Witch finally started to come into her own. Gamora finally got some sort of time to shine-ish. And Thanos was a wonderful villain, completely worthy of this entire 10 years of build-up. He had at least reasoning, some sort of sound reasoning for what it is he was doing and why he was trying to accomplish this goal, and that usually always makes for the best types of villains. I didn't love the ending, and that's really what keeps Avengers Infinity War from moving into a top 2 position. It didn't hit me like it's hit so many other people, and I think that's mostly a curse due to our current movie news cycle. It's just kind of okay, we're halfway through a complete film. And that's pretty much what it did. Just reminded me that I only watched half of a movie just then. In some ways, I guess people could argue it is an ending in its own right, but if that's the case, then it's a false ending that doesn't work for me. And otherwise, it's only half of a film, so that's kind of why Avengers gets stuck in at number 3, but obviously still an amazing time. So choosing between my top 2 was insanely difficult. I have flip-flopped on where to put each of these films over and over and over again. I just love them so much. This is a virtual tie for number 1, but we're ranking here on this channel, so we have to make the hard choices for these end-of-the-year lists. So, at number 2, I have I loved it. I loved this movie so much. For me, Killmonger is the definitive comic book villain of the year. And that has a lot to do with the writing, first of all, because they actually wrote a complex villain, as well as Michael B. Jordan's performance. He was intimidating, he was well-reasoned, he was a worthy figure to be the villain for Black Panther's first solo outing. But also, the ladies kicking ass and taking names in this film. Shuri was so good. I love the back and forth, getting this wonderful sibling relationship that is better than any other we've had in the MCU between T'Challa and Shuri. Oh, it was wonderful. Nikita providing the actually well-reasoned version of Killmonger's solution. Also able to fight, also able to hold her own, super intelligent, and beautifully portrayed by Lupita Nyong'o. And my girl, my new number 1 for females in the MCU, we had Okoye. Just badass, awesome, amazing. Plus the soundtrack was complete fire. But the MCU formula may be there. It is definitely the skeleton to this film. However, it's everything that was built upon that skeleton that makes Black Panther as special as it is. Just the setting of Wakanda and all of the cultural detail that was put into this film, the keen eye to creating this respectful, beautiful place of Wakanda was fantastic. And that setting was completely different than anything else we have ever seen within the MCU. It was done beautifully, from the music to the costumes to the traditions and the rituals. It all was just amazing. Now, what holds Black Panther back for me is undeniably the visuals, in particular in the third act, aren't great. Which is a shame, because I do think actually the visual effects up until that third act were pretty spectacular. But I can forgive some dodgy visuals when the writing, the acting, the directing, the setting, atmosphere, music, everything else about the film worked on every single level for me personally. So Black Panther's at number 2. And that leaves number 1 for the more and more I've thought about this film, the more and more I have fallen in love with it. As I said in my review, this movie is just something special. This style is revolutionary. And honestly, revolutionary is a statement I can't quite say for any of the other films on this list. It broke boundaries with this beautiful, amazing, gorgeous animation. And that animation is used to suck you in to get this beautiful, amazing origin story for Miles Morales. We finally got something different when it comes to Spider-Man, and oh, was it good. Miles is such a likable, warm, amazing character who fails continuously throughout his own origin story, kind of making that build up throughout more impactful, his coming of age even greater. And then we get all these other spider folk from the different universes, and they're fantastic. In particular, Spider Noir, played by Nicolas Cage, and of course, Spider Gwen. Absolutely amazing. And those animation styles that they bring in and they blend with the original style. Oh, I mean, it's amazing. Plus, this soundtrack is also fire, y'all. The action is absolutely stellar. Of course, Spider-Man's signature swinging is beautiful. Miles getting his black signature costume and getting to swing was a really impactful moment. And the relationships between Miles and his uncle and his father in particular were really well done. They were very well thought out, really well developed throughout the story, and I thought it worked. The ultimate battle was also a blast. Maybe it took a second to kind of get used to what it was you were looking at, but it was really great. I thought Kingpin was super intimidating, just as a force. And honestly, I'm glad he wasn't too much into the story, because I think that would have impeded on both Miles Morales and Peter Parker and their personal developments, because that's what really shone through here. I really have almost no negatives when it comes to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think it was that stellar. And I gotta say it again, this is a special film. These type of movies that broke ground and could possibly elevate and transform the medium of animation. So there wasn't really a way I could put any film above Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for 2018 comic book and superhero films, and thus, it takes that top spot. So that is my ranking of the 2018 superhero and comic book films. What did you think of the films I ranked here, and what did you think of my personal ranking? But more importantly, how would you rank the superhero and comic book films you saw in 2018? Leave your rankings down below. And if you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. I love you all so much for your support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!